This right here is vanilla Minecraft. Yes, I'm playing in a regular version of Minecraft, and in front of you, you see a ruby ore. How is this possible? In today's video, we'll be exploring the history of the ruby in Minecraft, why it was initially introduced, and why it never really made it into the game fully. And what is the future for the ruby in Minecraft. So if you like Minecraft videos like this one, then please make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more Minecraft videos just like this one in the future. So of course, this right over here is just a little resource pack which changes the textures of emerald blocks into ruby blocks from green to red, because none of these are in the game at the time of me making this video. But let's go over the history of the ruby first. And the first thing we've ever seen of the ruby is this tweet from Jens, who says, and this is why I'm playing with Testificates, which is the early name of Minecraft villagers. There's an Imgur link, and he also says work in progress as usual. And then looking at the picture there, we see all types of normal Minecraft items. The chestplate you see is an early texture of the leather chestplate. But we also see the ruby item here for the first time ever. There's a stack of 60 ruby items in his inventory, and you can also see that he's trading in some raw chicken for a ruby with the villager. And so this basically already confirms that the ruby was initially going to be used as a currency for villagers. Whereas now, of course, that is the role that emeralds fulfill. So you can trade with villagers using emeralds, but originally this is going to be rubies. And then afterwards, stuff happens quite quickly because the tweet was released on May 21st, where we clearly see the rubies appear in the villagers UI. And just 3 days later, we get Minecraft snapshot 12W21A, 3 days after the tweet. And at this point, they already made the switch from rubies to emeralds. And for a long time, we didn't actually get a reason for why they switched from one gemstone to the other. But what is interesting is that in that very first snapshot where they introduced the emeralds, something strange has happened. And that is how we got the intro of this video. And so this right here from the start of the video, as you may have already noticed, was in snapshot 12W21A, released all the way back in 2012. And so this right here is not actually called ruby ore, it's called emerald ore, but you can see that it has the texture of ruby ore. And if we mine this in survival mode, you will see that it actually does drop an emerald instead of a ruby. But still, it's really interesting to actually see this texture of the ruby in an official Minecraft snapshot. But it didn't last long because just 1 day after this snapshot released with the ruby ore texture, Mojang released Java Edition 12W21B, which turned this back into the emerald texture. So alright, then what was actually the reason of changing from the ruby to the emerald? Since rubies seem a fine gemstone as well. And for this, what we should do is actually look at the ores that were in the game at the point where they were going to add the ruby ore. So back then you only had coal, iron, gold, diamond, redstone and lapis lazuli. There were only 6 types of ore in the game back before Minecraft 1.3. Now let's add a ruby ore here. Of course, this is the new texture of ruby ore and not the original one. But you will notice that from far away, the ruby and redstone textures are actually very similar, at least definitely in terms of color. And this is not just speculation, we have this old post from Dinnerbone on the Minecraft forums, which mentions the following. We actually didn't go with rubies and changed to emeralds at the last minute for villager trading because I'm colorblind and couldn't easily spot the difference between the ruby ore and the redstone ore until I was up close. So yeah, just because ruby happens to be a red gemstone and they already introduced redstone in a previous update, they decided to switch out the ruby for emerald. And indeed, if we look at the lineup just like this, you can see that the emerald looks significantly different from all the other ores already present in the game. And you can also see that they decided on a different layout for the ore compared to redstone, which also makes it easier to differentiate. They did the same thing for lapis lazuli to differentiate it from diamonds. And of course, the reason to differentiate the green emerald ore from the red redstone ore with a different pattern is that many people have red-green color blindness, which would still make them look similar. And so basically, just because Jens couldn't tell the difference between ruby and redstone at a distance, we got emeralds for villager trading, which of course emeralds are now one of the staples of Minecraft. But is there still a future for the ruby item? Well, back in version 1.17, they actually removed the ruby texture that was present in the game files, but they have made references to rubies in the somewhat recent past as well, because in the April Fool's update 23W13A or B, you could vote for emeralds changing into rubies. So there is a nice little reference there. But apart from that, there has been no mention of actually introducing the ruby into the game. And that also makes sense, because just adding a ruby for the sake of adding a ruby wouldn't be a great addition. There had to be some sort of functionality, just like we now have with the emeralds that work with villager trading. The ruby would need to get its own unique functionality for it to be added into the game. And so there's definitely still a chance that we'll see rubies in some form in Minecraft in the future. However, I wouldn't expect them to be added anytime soon. But anyway, there we go. That's the history of the ruby and why it was changed into the emerald. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this video. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, then please subscribe!